what is a near-death experience?
Well, I'm delighted to be here with you today, Yvonne. Thank you for inviting me. A near death experience is a very profound experience that many people have when they come close to death or sometimes are pronounced dead. And it includes changes in their thought process. They think faster and clearer than ever before. They often have a rush of memories from their lives. They have strong emotions, often very strong positive emotions, tremendous peace and joy and well being. Some phenomena that we call paranormal, for lack of a better word, leaving their bodies, um, sometimes seeing the future, having extrasensory perception of things going on around them, and then otherworldly things like a sense of leaving this earth and going to some other non-physical realm, seeing deceased loved ones, sometimes seeing entities they think may be deities, and then coming to a border or point of no return beyond which they can't keep going and still go back to earth.
And what was it? What was the point at which you started to think, "Wow, is there something to this?" Was there a particular moment in your career that you thought, "Hold on a second"? Because I imagine people in the medical field and world are like, "I'm not so sure about this. Are they just hallucinating, or did they think they saw something?" So, what gripped you?
Right. Well, I was raised in a scientific household where we never talked about anything spiritual. We had no religious background. So, as far as we were concerned, the physical world is all there is, and there was nothing else. What you see is what you get. So, I went through college and medical school with that mindset. And in fact, we were taught in medical school that the mind is what the brain does, and there's nothing that's not caused by the physical processes in the brain. And then when I started my training as a psychiatrist, one of my first nights there on call in the emergency room was to see a patient who had overdosed. And when I went to see her, she was totally unconscious. And I couldn't talk to her, but I talked to her roommate who had brought her in. And I had about a 20-minute conversation with the roommate. And I went back to see the patient, and she was still unconscious, so she was admitted to the intensive care unit. When I saw her the next morning, she told me about the conversation I had with her roommate, almost word for word, including what we were wearing and what the room looked like and so forth. And I just couldn't make any sense of that. I, that didn't compute for me. So I assumed that somehow people are playing a trick on me here. I'm a new intern. I don't know what I'm doing. They're trying to fool me. I pushed it out of my mind. And in the next couple of years, I encountered a few more patients who had experiences when they had died or almost died that seemed unbelievable. I just attributed these to hallucinations since they were psychiatric patients. Several years after I started seeing these patients, I met Raymond Moody, who was training in psychiatry at my institution, the University of Virginia, and he had written a book called Life After Life, in which he gave us the name near-death experience and described them in normal everyday people who were not psychiatric patients. So I realized these were very common and not necessarily related to mental illness. As a scientist, I figured I need to understand what's going on here. So I started collecting cases, which was not hard because they're very common. They're about 1 out of every 20 people who comes close to death will have one. And I started testing, as any good materialistic doctor would, all the hypotheses I could think of to explain them, like lack of oxygen to the brain, or drugs given to patients, or chemicals produced in the brain. And the more things I tested, the fewer answers I got. There just wasn't seeming to be any explanation in terms of the brain to account for these experiences. And now,
And
50
when
years later, I'm still trying to
Yes.
understand them.